Our next story is about Justin Trudeau. His trip to India has been disastrous. A textbook example of Murphy's Law. Everything that can go wrong will go wrong. That's Murphy's Law, and that's the story of Justin Trudeau's India visit. First, he was pulled up by the Indian Prime Minister, the Indian leadership. Then he could not fly back home. He was supposed to leave on Sunday, but his plane broke down. It's Monday night in New Delhi now, and the Canadian delegation is still here. They've not been able to fix the plane and go back home. And I'm guessing they're not in a hurry, because when they land in Canada, they will meet a flood of criticism. International media in general, and the Canadian media in particular, have been unsparing. I'll show you some examples. The Toronto Sun on Sunday, this is what they said. This way out, Trudeau finds he has few friends in India. Now look at Bloomberg. Trudeau is stuck in India with faulty aircraft after hearing criticism from Modi. Then we come to Reuters. This is what they've said. Modi scolds Trudeau over Sikh protests in Canada against India. It was quite bad, but hardly surprising. The India-Canada relationship has hit rock bottom, and Trudeau only has himself to blame for this. His politics is poisoning the relationship. He has given Khalistanis a free run in Canada. This year, on 2 separate occasions, India summoned the Canadian High Commissioner in New Delhi, and on both occasions over the same issue, Khalistan. Canada refuses to act against Khalistani terrorists on its soil. India condemns this inaction. Yesterday, on the sidelines of the G20 summit, the issue came up again. Prime Minister Modi conveyed his displeasure personally. He met the Canadian PM briefly for barely 15 minutes. And Prime Minister Modi did not mince his words. He said, there are extremists in Canada. They're indulging in separatist activities and inciting violence against Indian diplomats. They're damaging India's diplomatic premises and threatening the Indian community. Prime Minister Modi also conveyed that these separatists have links to organized crime, drug syndicates and human trafficking. After the meeting, Trudeau was asked about this frosty exchange. And here's what he said.
Obviously, Canada will always defend freedom of expression, freedom of conscience, freedom of peaceful protest. That's something that's extremely important to us. At the same time as we're always there to prevent violence, to push back against hatred. I think on the issue of the community, it's important to remember that the actions of the few do not represent the entire community or Canada.
You heard what he said. Canada will defend freedom of expression, as they should. This is Trudeau's go-to defense, and it holds no water in this case. Attacking Indian diplomats is not freedom of expression. Threatening to assassinate the Indian Prime Minister is not freedom of expression. Khalistanis bombed an airplane, for God's sake. They carried out the worst terror attack on Canadian soil. They took more than 300 lives. Would Prime Minister Justin Trudeau call it freedom of expression? His defense is not just tone deaf and plain wrong. It's an affront to Indian sovereignty and to common sense, if I may add. Even as he was enjoying Indian hospitality, Khalistanis were in action in Canada. On Sunday, they took to the streets of Vancouver. Reports say there was a large crowd, over 5,000 people, according to some accounts. And they were being led by this man, Gurpatwant Singh Pannu, a Khalistani terrorist and a spokesperson of a group called Sikhs for Justice. India has banned this group. The government of India has designated this man as a terrorist. But the government of Canada, under Justin Trudeau, gives him a free rein. He operates freely in Canada. Take a look.
This is a message to those who assassinated Najjar. We are calling for your political death. Asi karange thoda rajsi qatal. Modi, Jaishankar, Doval, Shah, we are coming for you. We are coming with the might of the pen, and we are using the international laws. Yes, we are going to challenge the territorial integrity. Yes, we are going to challenge the sovereignty. We are going to balkanize India.
In this rally, he was openly giving calls to break up India. He said, we will balkanize India. He's threatening to attack Indian leaders. He was inciting the crowd against India. And what did the Canadian authorities do? Did they stop Pannu? Did they arrest him? They did not. Instead, they are facilitating a referendum that pushes for the creation of Khalistan, that pushes for the breakup of India. And let me repeat, all of this is being facilitated by the government of Canada while their Prime Minister is still in India. No wonder they got a dressing down from Prime Minister Modi. And he is being slammed by Canada's opposition too. The country's main opposition leader, Pierre Poilievre, has said, and I quote, "Putting partisanship aside, no one likes to see a Canadian Prime Minister repeatedly humiliated and trampled upon by the rest of the world." He shared that front page of the Toronto Times with this post. And this is not the first time that Justin Trudeau has been snubbed and scolded in India. He came for a long visit in 2018. Some of you may remember it was equally disastrous. He tried to woo India. He dressed in Indian attire, visited a temple, went to the Taj Mahal, even showed his Bhangra moves at a High Commission event. No one was impressed. The photo ops were overshadowed by a scandal. Trudeau's office invited a Khalistani for a reception. They withdrew the invite later, but by then the damage was done. Justin Trudeau had egg on his face, and he admitted it. Let me quote from what he said about his 2018 visit to India. He called it, and I'm quoting, "a blaring, negative, wall-to-wall international ridicule." So he knows that it was a big flop, and he has learned no lessons. In fact, he made it worse the second time, this time. And his broken down plane is perhaps the cherry on the top. Justin Trudeau, with his disastrous India policy and his appeasement of Khalistani terrorists, has become a national embarrassment for Canada.